Finders Keepers, Art Restitution and the Transformation of Foreign Relations. In the 2018 blockbuster film Black Panther, the main antagonist, Eric Killmonger, inside the Museum of Great Britain, says an artifact was taken by British soldiers in Benin. Then Killmonger calls out the harmful effects of colonization by saying, "How do you think your ancestors got these? You think they paid full price for it, or did they take it like they took everything else?" This powerful movie sequence opened up the dialogue for African art restitution. According to Peter Ford for the Christian Science Monitor, nearly 500,000 items, an estimated 90% of sub-Saharan Africa's cultural heritage, are currently held, mostly in museum cellars, outside of the continent. This begs the question, should artifacts in museums be returned to their country of origin? The process of returning these artifacts is known as restitution. As film gave rise to dialogue on the issue of art restitution, other mediums, such as social media and video games, can stimulate discourse on social issues, according to scholars Edward Kessler and Jane McGonigal, respectively. Edward Kessler speaks on the topic of social media and the rapid movement of ideas in our modern global society. Art in general can be seen as a classic example of the movement of new and exciting ideas. Kessler's article advocates for global improvement and modernization with a focus on religion and social media. Art restitution can be seen in the same light. Jane McGonigal speaks to the point that a modern gamer has the heightened ability to solve problems, so everyone should play games more often in order to hone that skill and work towards global improvement. The idea of achieving global improvement through online resources is shared by Kessler and McGonigal. If the artifacts are returned to the country of origin, modern-day global political climate would hold less conflict, and a new sense of respect between African nations and European nations would be curated. Returning artifacts will transform relations between countries by correcting historical misdeeds and preserving culture. The European countries that are currently housing certain cultural artifacts from Africa are not the countries who should be passing on the stories of another country's past. European nations housing artifacts that belong to African tribes must return the artifacts. Restitution of African artifacts will allow for the tribes to preserve their own culture and history. Tarita Alarcon Rapu, governor of Easter Island, visited London to retrieve a piece of art that was stolen by a British ship in 1868, saying, "We are just the body. You, the England people, have our soul." Rapu fought back tears while delivering this passionate statement, but England has still refused to budge on the matter of restituting art. According to Elaine Gadono, a Beninese conservator with 30 years of experience, artifacts will help root African youth that need to learn about their rich heritage. Housing these artifacts in European museums prevents the spread of knowledge to the people who need it the most, the future generations of Africans. It is important for the countries who suffered from colonization, invasion, and exploitation to get a sort of reparation for the wrongdoings of Europeans from the past. Farah Nayiri, a journalist from the New York Times that focuses on art and culture in her writing, reports on an artist's new display that made her start a conversation about colonialism in modern-day museums. Kader Attia, in his new exhibition, The Museum of Emotion, has many parts to the display. Attia critiques Western museums' approach to African heritage and their tendency to undervalue, misread, and misrepresent its treasures, and to view it still through colonial eyes. In a room at the Hayward, for example, he shows 3 bird-shaped African ritual masks alongside animal and plant specimens. This misrepresentation of African cultures is detrimental to the morale of the true owners of the pieces. Restituting the artifacts would allow for African nations to display pieces and to explain their history the right way. Returning cultural artifacts to their original country will improve foreign relations and help preserve relatively peaceful global climate. It may seem like a small solution for a big problem, but returning the artifacts is a step in the right direction to strengthen bonds between countries as a gesture of peace and apology. French President Emmanuel Macron has had success in returning artifacts. Macron returned a throne to Benin, and Kader Attia said that it was a strong gesture, and that you need strong gestures to change the world. Kessler, a leading thinker in interfaith dialogue, says in relation to the internet and how it aids in cultural and social advances that people create revolutions, not the technology they use. In order for change to happen in the world, people need to make change on their own and acknowledge mistakes of their ancestors by taking ownership and returning artifacts. This is similar to the idea that peace starts with action. Returning culturally significant treasures to their country of origin is a daunting task, since there are whole archives full of these precious pieces. It is important that they are returned, but some of the artifacts originate from war-torn regions, so returning them could cause unwanted damage of the artifacts. Peter Tampa, a speaker for the International Association of Professional Numismatists and the Professional Numismatists Guild, explained important restrictions were never meant to be permanent. Rather, they were aimed at cutting market demand to allow time for a source country to get its own house in order. Keeping pieces of a foreign country's history is not justified by such a pretentious argument that embodies the superiority mindset of colonialism. Modern art and artifact theft isn't limited to colonial periods, as it is still a global problem. According to Husna Haq, writing for the Christian Science Monitor in July of 2017, Hobby Lobby returned to Iraq 5,500 artifacts, including ancient cuneiform clay tablets illegally smuggled out of the country in 2009 and camouflaged as tiles. More regulations on private foreign trade to prevent more theft and unethical transfer of artifacts would prevent another Hobby Lobby fiasco from happening. The problem is that more regulations does not always equal less problems, since manpower for enforcement is often a limitation of legislation. Law enforcement and shipping companies would have to employ more people to sift through packages, entering and leaving foreign countries too. Legislators could make new laws, but it's usually a long process, and there's no guarantee that new regulations would be passed or effective. According to research and evidence of success internationally, such as the shining example of France, stolen artifacts should be returned to the country of origin, since French President Macron has been a pioneer in maintaining peace by returning art. The foreign nations appreciate the restitution of art, as it preserves culture, rights the wrongs of the past, and promotes peace and a state of solidarity between nations. However, stolen property laws stand in the way of complete restitution. War-torn nations cannot house the artifacts, and museums may lose patrons if they give up their treasures. Overcoming these obstacles is essential to a global peace climate. As Kessler said, people create revolutions. The first step in this is to restitute the artifacts. James Saman, professor in the Charles Whitger School of Law at Villanova University, points out the flaws in the United States not joining the rest of the world in art restitution. Saman proposes that it is due to two dominant camps in American private law thought: left-leaning redistributionalists and the center-right legal economists. France should be seen as a model example for art restitution, and that the United States needs to join in on.
Okay, Morgan, thank you. Okay, the first of two questions. What information did you need before you began your research, and then how did that information shape your research?
Well, watching the Black Panther movie when it first came out and seeing a similar research question to mine posed led me to research my topic. And knowing about some art history and the struggles that minorities face in our global society helped shape my research by giving me some starting points and keywords like stolen cultural artifacts, which led me to the official term of art restitution.
Okay. And then second, what additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
Some questions that emerged were maybe places where art restitution didn't work out, or where artifacts were asked to be returned but they weren't, and the effects of that. Peter Tampa spoke and said that war-torn regions were the reason that some artifacts weren't being returned, and when they are returned, though, there's a bunch of success, as Macron has shown.
Okay, thank you.